Hi there, this is David and welcome to the Top 10 Worst JRPG Party Members, Part 6. Here, we'll be recounting characters from classic RPGs who are just terrible in battle. If you missed the previous parts, check the video description for links and keep the comments and recommendations coming. The more I think about the games that I've played over the years, the more that I remember some of these useless buggers. So, let's let the roast commence. Number 10, Morgana of Persona 5. Don't worry folks, we'll get to Yusuke soon enough, but first I have to go over this damn cat. Here, we have another Marl. Great when you first get him since he's your only true healer, but then completely and utterly useless the second that you get anybody else who can heal. In Marl's case, that was Frog and Robo, but here it's An and later Makoto. While Morgana is incredibly squishy, many times dying in just 1 or 2 hits, Makoto and An are both much more durable, and Makoto has the exact same healing spells as Morgana. Add to the fact that his persona can't evolve until the very end of the game, and he's pretty much just going to be reduced to menu backup healing after the very first palace. And thank God too, because then you don't have to drag this massively annoying, overly talkative, second-rate pussy around with you. Just go to sleep, Mona. Number 9, Akira of Live Alive. When this was first translated years back, I quickly picked it up and played it, expecting a masterpiece, but instead, I realized why it languished in Japan. At the start of the game, you'll have to progress through 7 different characters' chapters before each character meets up in the final chapter of the game. At that point, you can choose who you want to join your party, and it's pretty much suicide to choose Akira. He has the absolute worst stats across the board, and the only thing going for him is that he's one of 2 healers. But even with his bad stats, he's a worse healer than Cube. And Cube is probably the strongest character in the game too. It's a shame. Had he not existed, Akira would have been essential. But like some other characters who grace these halls of shame, they're here because they're simply outclassed in every way by someone better. Number 8, Rosh of Radiant Historia. On the rare occasions that he's actually available to be in your party, the big guy is just underwhelming. He can move enemies around, which is useful, but so can a bunch of other people. Then he's one of those tanks that I just love so much, which means that he's hit with the double whammy of being slow as anything, along with having no magic to speak of, and this is uniquely terrible in a game that rewards combos that alternate physical and magical attacks. Now here comes the real issue that I alluded to before. The bitch is just never there. He's pretty much almost completely unavailable in the standard history timeline, and then when you do get him in alternate history, he just seems to up and leave stock at every turn. So, on the rare occasions when he finally deigns to rejoin you, his levels do lag behind everybody else's. Number 7, Jan of Legend of Heroes, Song of the Ocean. Another worst characters list? Another dog. First, we looked at Boney in Mother 3, who had nothing going for him. Then we turned our sights on Tony of Wild Arms XF, who couldn't participate in the job system, and now we're going to turn our ire over to Jan. Like the other dogs that we've seen, he's fast. I can't fault him there, but what I can fault him on is that he's unavailable to equip anything else outside of a few accessories. Add to the fact that he's the only party member who can't use resonance stones to cast magic either, and you have a very one-note character. Thankfully, they did give him a niche, the ability to steal, but this isn't exactly Final Fantasy here. You'll be lucky if you ever get anything beyond potions and antidotes. I feel that Jan is intentionally placed in the party to have someone to bench when you get your new Characters of the Week at each town that you go to. Number 6, Lune of Dragon Quest IV. As a kid playing Dragon Warrior 4 on the NES, Lune was always a staple in my party, mostly because I thought that it was kind of cool that he did his own thing, and I liked that he could rarely summon an army of merchants to just curb stomp the opposition. It wasn't until I played the DS remake that I realized what a turd this dumb cow is. First of all, his chapter just drags. The entire time you just want it to be over so you can move on to the Spunky Sisters. But when he rejoins in Chapter 5, he has nothing to offer. His equipment selection is subpar, he's essentially a weaker version of Ragnar, and even when you control your guys directly, he's still going to go and use his stupid goof-off abilities whenever he damn well pleases. Well, then I guess it just pleases me to throw his ass back into the wagon, never to see the light of day. Number 5, Cielo of Digital Devil Saga. I've expressed my love for this series before, It's essentially Final Fantasy X meets Persona, but set in a hellscape junkyard instead of a high school. Each of your party members excels in one element, while having a weakness in another. But Cielo is pretty much just all weaknesses. You see, he's weak to every single status ailment in the game, and anyone who's ever played an SMT game knows how annoyingly deadly status ailments are. We're not just talking about sleep and poison here. Having him die to the instant death spells constantly is one thing, but then having him get charmed and watching him single-handedly decimate your team is nothing short of infuriating. Add to the fact that his level gains emphasize luck and agility over the far more useful strength and magic stats, and you've got a real clunker on your hands. Number 4. Gremio of Suikoden. A lot of you have been waiting for some Suikoden love from this series, and I've already looked at those stupid scrolls from the second game, but Gremio is probably worse than them, because at least they're not required for half the game. This overblown maid never leaves you alone. I mean, I know that he's in love with the hero, but that's no excuse for him to be constantly crashing my party. I have 108 other characters that I want to fool around with, yet I'm forced to use this loser all the time. I know that it's supposed to be an emotional moment when he finally dies, but I was ecstatic. That meant that he would no longer be bothering me when he knows that he's not wanted. It would be one thing if he actually brought anything useful to the table, but the only thing that he should be bringing to you is his homemade stew. Number 3. Hugh of Phantasy Star 2. The 90s. What a time. A time when absolutely useless scientists would join your party for no reason whatsoever instead of just helping you out on the sidelines. We saw this first with Sid from Final Fantasy IV, then again with Lexus and Lufia too. Only Hugh's arguably worse than either of them, because while they were forced into your party to be used as maybe a tank or a caster or a meat shield of some sort, Hugh is mercifully optional. As a biologist, his skills are only effective on bio monsters, which are pretty easy to deal with anyway. But if you do want to use him, he'll be helpful for 3 dungeons. Then you'll want to immediately replace him with Kane, because once the robots take over, he is literally dead weight. Number 2. Kiwi of Shining Force 2. At least he's better than Yogurt from the first game, but that's not saying much. Kiwi is a turtle, and as such, he's got pretty high defense when you first get him, but that's really it. The stats that you see when he joins are pretty much the stats that you're going to get, because he gets next to no increases when he levels up. So by the end of the game, everybody else has caught up to his levels of defense, while his attack, HP, and more importantly, magic defense have remained static. Get ready for this guy to get one-shotted by any spell that comes his way. And he can't use any skills whatsoever either, though he does have a low chance of breathing fire, but otherwise, all he's gonna do is hit for 1 damage all the time. He just has nothing going for him, and as far as I'm concerned, you can leave him out shivering in the cold. And number 1, the many losers of Fire Emblem. This series is quite the juggernaut, going on for about 3 decades now. It's bound to have its fair share of losers, so I'll try to hit the high or low points in this case. In the Binding Blade, Wendy, the useless armor knight, and Sophia, the level 1 mage, are ridiculously horrid, with both of them joining extremely late in the game with abysmal stats and unpromoted to boot. And then speaking of promotions, there's Soth in Path of Radiance, whose stats can never really get all that high, and he can't promote at all for some godforsaken reason. Then there's Dew, another useless thief, who can't go anywhere and can only use the worst swords in Genealogy of the Holy War. Radiant Dawn has some craptastic characters too, with Fiona, who the game seems to actively discourage you from even touching, and Meg. Armors in general suck, but they made her even worse. I mean, what's the point? They're supposed to be on the front lines protecting you, but they can barely move, so they're always in the back doing nothing. And speaking of bad classes, what's with the archers? Walt, Gordon, and Will can all just go die in a fire as far as I'm concerned. Well, that's it for the top 10 worst JRPG party members part 6. Please be on the lookout for a part 7, and as always, feel free to mention the ones that you hate the most in the comments. This has been David. If you like this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good day.